All right, we're going to talk today about two more things that discouragement can do. So the first thing is it can make you want to avoid your responsibility. You know you're responsible to do it, but you're so discouraged because it's not happening the way you thought it would, and you're not as good at it maybe as you had hoped you would be, and you're just discouraged. And discouragement can get into your head and make you feel like it's just better if I don't even try. So we see that happened with Elijah, okay, in 1 Kings 19. He was like the prophet of the day. Nobody was like Elijah. And then what happens? Jezebel sends a word saying, by this time tomorrow, you're going to be dead, just like all the prophets of Baal who you killed. And Elijah gets scared and he's discouraged and he's like, what's going to happen? I don't have any hope. And he goes into hiding and he's like, I'm not willing to go forward. Like he's like, I'm not a prophet anymore. Like basically that's where he was. He was so discouraged. He was on such a victory, and then suddenly he was in such a low. And I know that happens. Sometimes it feels like an emotional roller coaster. We're on such a high, and then the floor falls out from under us. Jonah, he was another prophet, and he was also such a man of the people, and everybody was like, what's the word from the Lord? And then God gives him a word for Nineveh, and Jonah's discouraged because Jonah doesn't want to have a word for Nineveh. Jonah doesn't like Nineveh. He hates Nineveh. Like he has every reason to be against Nineveh, but God is saying, I love Nineveh. Go give them this word. And Jonah gets discouraged. And Jonah's like, no, I don't want to do it. He's going to avoid his responsibility. And Jonah tries to outsmart God and go the opposite way. Didn't work well for him. Okay? So what happens when we try to avoid that responsibility, it leads into the next thing, which is how it corrupts and it warps our thinking. And we don't have good reasoning. We can't discern properly. We're not seeing things the right way. We're so discouraged, we stop being able to assess the situation the way it really is. So, I mean, obviously you see that with Elijah and definitely with Jonah. So what happens is the devil likes to use that. Like we start off on the right path. We're obeying God. We're being faithful. We're trying our best. And then what? We hit a setback. And instead of us remembering all the good we were doing, all the victories we've had, the enemy just plays over and over in our ear that failure. And we get discouraged. And if someone else isn't just right there cheering us on, you can do it, which, you know, in real life, many times nobody's there. Then what happens? We start to believe that discouragement. And the enemy, he's so willing to speak discouragement to you if you'll listen to him, because he knows it'll affect your thinking, and then you'll be hesitant to follow God. So another way that happens is even in a practical way. Let's say, you know, you're a young person and you have an exam the next day, and so the teacher gives you, you know, some like a slip test to practice for that exam, and you start working on it, and then it's so tough and you can't figure it out, and instead of asking for help, which is what you would want to do, right? So you could be prepared. You just blow off the whole thing, you go outside and you play with your friends, and the next day, what? You're going to fail the test. So you didn't have good discernment. You're not having good thinking. You're not making the right decision in the moment because you're so discouraged from trying again and again. Maybe adults, maybe we're working at a job, and maybe we're hoping that we're going to get a raise or we're going to get this promotion that's there. And so we come in early and we take on extra projects and we work late thinking, I'm going to get that promotion, and then we don't, and we're so discouraged. And instead of hanging on to the word that God gave us, instead of continuing to be faithful, what? We just quit the job. What? That's wrong thinking that comes about by discouragement. That discouragement has affected your thinking. So, going the second mile, we want to be aware of these tactics of the enemy, that he is trying to get us to abandon the call of God on our life. He's trying to assassinate God's appointed plan for you. That's what he wants. He wants to discourage you so much that you avoid that responsibility. And you may say, well, I'm not a prophet. Okay, but maybe, you know, you're a mother and you're supposed to be pouring into your children, but you're so discouraged because of decisions they're taking. You think, what's the use? And so you just, you know, turn on the TV and you engage in an unreal world, or you read a book, but you've disengaged from what God had for you, which is investing in your children. So we have to be aware of this plan of the enemy and how he's trying to use it to just take away the dreams God has for us. So going the second mile, whatever discouragement you're facing, push it to the side. And don't let the enemy replay your discouragement or your failure in your ear. Remind yourself of that word that God gave you and know that He is faithful. And 1 Thessalonians 5:24, faithful is He who calls you, and He will bring it to pass.